that song.
I'm in love with that song.
I love that song.
I'm in love with that song.
I love that song.
I love that song.
I'm in love with that song.
I love that song.
I'm in love with that song.
Welcome back to the I'm in love with that song podcast. I'm Brad Page, your host here on the Pantheon Podcast Network, where each episode we explore some of my favorite songs. About 2 years ago, I did a special edition of the podcast to celebrate the anniversary of the Nuggets album, one of the most important compilation albums ever released. Nuggets celebrated the forgotten bands from the 60s psychedelic garage rock era. It inspired many other collections of long-lost sounds from that era when it seemed there was a teenage band on every street and all things seemed possible. There was so much music being made that Nuggets couldn't possibly cover it all, even over the course of multiple volumes. One of the things about Nuggets is that it was very U.S.-centric. But of course, there was psychedelic music being made in garages, basements, and living rooms around the world, especially in the UK. And one of the companion series to Nuggets were the Rubble albums, collecting tons of obscure 60s bands from the UK and Europe. Starting in 1984, there would ultimately be 20 Rubble albums issued. On this episode, we'll be sampling a whole bunch of songs from the first 10 volumes of Rubble. So strap yourself in because we're setting the Wayback Machine to 1960s England. Whether you call it psychedelic rock, garage rock, or one of the more esoteric names like pop psych or freak beat, we're talking about bands that formed in the wake of the big bang that was the Beatles, when millions of teenagers and young adults went out and bought guitars and drums and formed bands of their own. Some of these bands were more professional than others, but the one thing they all have in common is that none of them had any long-term success, although, as we'll see, occasionally a band member would go on to find success with another group. On this episode, we're looking at songs recorded from 1965 to around 1968, primarily from bands from the UK, although there may be a couple from Europe in here. All of these bands are included on the Rubble series of compilation albums. Let's kick things off with a band called Fire. Fire were a three-piece band from Hounslow, West London. They were originally called Friday's Child and recorded a couple of demos which got them some attention from Apple, the Beatles record label. Someone suggested they change their name to Fire, and they recorded their first single for Decca Records in March 1968. When it came time to record their second single, the record label forced them to record a song by an outside songwriter, and the band didn't even play on the single. They were not happy about any of that, and that pretty much ended their relationship with Apple and Decca. They would record one album for Pi Records in 1970, but that was it for Fire. We're going to go back to their first single from 1968. This song they wrote and played themselves. It's called My Father's Name is Dad. And despite the wacky title, this song actually has a great Beatles-ish guitar riff and a pretty catchy chorus.
Don't expect a supernatural intellect. Me, just like the other kids, lived a world of building bricks. My father's name was Dad, my mother's name was Mom.
That was Fire with My Father's Name is Dad. Here's a song by The Click, or The Clique, depending on where you're from, I guess. The Click were from North London. I don't know much about this band, but this was their second single from September 1965, produced by the legendary British producer Larry Page, who produced The Kinks and the Troggs' classic Wild Thing. This is another song with an awkward title. This one's called We Didn't Kiss, Didn't Love, But Now We Do. Great guitar sound, though.
We did kiss in love and now we do. We did kiss in love and now we do. We did kiss in love but we do now. We were young, too young to fall in love, to kiss and do the things other people tell us we should do. We did kiss in love, but now we do.
The Click. We didn't kiss, didn't love, but now we do. This next song is one of the most interesting stories of the British psychedelic scene in the 1960s. Follow me on this one because it's a bit of a long story, but worth the payoff. Zoot Money and the Big Roll Band were formed in the early 60s, featuring vocalist and keyboard player Zoot Money. They primarily played soul and R&B tunes, but when the scene began to change and the psychedelic sound was all the rage, Zoot changed the name of the band to Dantalion's Chariot in 1967 and essentially rebranded them as an acid-tinged psychedelic rock band. They played shows with Pink Floyd and The Crazy World of Arthur Brown, performing in white robes with one of the best psychedelic light shows around. In September 1967, they released their one and only single, a psychedelic pop masterpiece called Madman Running Through the Fields. They went into the studio to record an album, but most of it was rejected by the record label, and when it was eventually retooled and released, it came out as a Zoot Money and the Big Roll Band album. Dantalion's Chariot was no more, having lasted only a year. For decades, it was thought that those original Dantalion's Chariot recordings were lost, but they were eventually rediscovered and released on an album called Chariots Rising in 1996, almost 20 years after they were originally recorded. Now, if the name Zoot Money sounds at all vaguely familiar to you, it may be because you've heard of their guitar player. Andy Summers played guitar in Zoot Money's band, and he followed him into Dantalion's Chariot, co-writing many of their songs. Andy Summers would go on to play in a little band called The Police. But for now, let's go back to 1967 when Andy Summers was wearing white robes and writing psychedelic songs like this one. This is the legendary track, Madman Running Through the Fields.
Things went okay, and then one day, pow, I can expound with the new words found. If reason's gone, then how do I live on? Because I know which way I must go. Where can I go? Now that I know, time has gone by. Time has gone Isn't that the madman running through the fields? Isn't that the madman? Wonder how he feels. You look at me, what do you see now?
Dantalion's Chariot, Madman Running Through the Fields. Next up is a band called Jason Crest. There's nobody named Jason Crest in Jason Crest, just 5 guys from Kent who were originally called the Good Time Brigade and then the Good Time Losers before settling on Jason Crest as their name. They released 5 singles between 1967 and 1969. Supposedly, they put on a killer live show, but it didn't translate into record sales. Their final single was a song called Black Mass. Though it's more goofy than it is scary, the record company held this one back out of concern, though it was still released before Black Sabbath recorded their first album. Here's Black Mass by Jason Crest.
Likenesses of men I see, they're women who are evil by decree. They worship everything that's vile. Now the Holy Trinity has been defiled. Darkness be damned, release your hold over man. Let there be light, stop these sounds.
Black Mass by Jason Crest. Everybody knows Magic Bus by The Who, but did you know that they were not the first ones to release it? Pete Townsend wrote the song, but gave it to a band called The Pudding, who released it in April 1967. The Who didn't release it until July 1968. Here's the version by The Pudding.
Now every day I get in the queue to get in the bus that brings me to you. I'm so nervous, just sit and smile. Your house is only another mile. Thank you, driver, for getting me here. Let's ride the magic bus. You'll be an inspector, have no fear. Let's ride the magic bus. Now, I don't wish to cause no fuss. Let's ride the magic bus. But can I buy your magic bus, mister? Let's ride the magic bus. No. Now I don't care how much I pay. Let's ride the magic bus. I'm driving my bus to my baby each day. Let's ride the magic bus.
Magic Bus by The Pudding. Here's a song by a band called Turquoise. They were from Muswell Hill, a suburb of London. Muswell Hill was also home to The Kinks, and you can definitely hear a Kinks influence on this song, Tales of Flossie Fillet, one of only 2 singles released by Turquoise.
It all happened so many years ago. Nobody knows, cause nobody wants to know. Barbara Boffin, good old Sydney Side, they're the founder members and leaders of the line. It's very sad that they should has just been born. So was Hector and friendly Percy Paul. When they're forgotten, who'll take their place? Another Flossie with a different face.
Tales of Flossie Phillip by Turquoise. If I say the name Dream Police to you, you're going to think of the song or the album by Cheap Trick, right? But 10 years before Cheap Trick released that song, there was a band from Scotland called the Dream Police, formed in 1967. They released 3 singles before disbanding. Guitarist and singer Hamish Stewart would go on to form the Average White Band and spent a chunk of the 90s in Paul McCartney's band. Here's a song by the Dream Police called Living is Easy. Dream Police with Living is Easy. One thing you don't see too often with these psychedelic bands, neither here or on the Nuggets albums, unfortunately, are groups fronted by women. Not too many female voices to be heard, but here's one. Sharon Tandy was originally from South Africa, moving to the UK in 1964. She actually recorded some tracks at Stax Studios in Memphis and was the opening act on the legendary Stax Volt Tour of Europe in 1967. She cut 2 singles with the band Fleur de Lis. Here's one of those tracks, a nice riffy rocker called Hold On. Sharon Tandy and Fleur de Lis with Hold On. This next group was originally called the Silvertone Set, playing mostly soul and R&B influenced songs. They changed their name to the Elastic Band and released 1 album and a couple of singles, none of which were hits. Their guitar player, Andy Scott, would later become a member of the quintessential glam band, Sweet. Here's a song he co-wrote for the Elastic Band called 8.5 Hours of Paradise.
I'm leaving tomorrow, starting a tour of the land. Girls, they all come to see us every night on one night stands. I may be feeling sad, but you're at home with that. They're in the spotlights, I see your face, baby.
2.5 hours of paradise by the Elastic Band. The Dakotas were from Manchester, England. They first came to fame as the backing band for Billy J. Kramer. In 1964, Mick Green joined them as their guitarist. He'd made a name for himself with Johnny Kidd and the Pirates. The Dakotas released a few singles on their own. This is a particularly tasty B-side featuring a great guitar riff from Mick Green. It's called The Spider and the Fly. The Spider and the Fly by the Dakotas. For the next couple of tracks, we're going to cheat a little bit and go outside of the UK. We're going to take a side trip to the Netherlands and listen to a song by a band called Group 1850. This track is one of the loopiest psychedelic tracks I've ever heard. Manic drumming, spoken word, chanting, trippy guitar work, and a flute. Folks, this one's got it all. It's called Mother No Head.
Who is crying? Who is dying? She is mad. She is sad. It is Mother No Head. It is Mother No Head. She is dead. She is dead.
Mother No Head by Group 1850. Here's another Dutch band, Dragonfly. These guys never had a hit outside of their home country, but they did manage to release 2 singles. Dragonfly was wearing face makeup years before Kiss came up with it. You can find some clips on YouTube if you look for them. Here's a song by Dragonfly, a vintage fuzz tone extravaganza called Celestial Empire. Celestial Empire by Dragonfly. Back in the British Isles, the Flies were making a stir in London. Apparently, they dumped 800 bags of flour on their audience at one show. Here are the Flies covering the Monkees. They slow I'm Not Your Stepping Stone down and bring out the nasty edge in this classic song.
stone. Well, you're trying to make your mark on society by using all the tricks that you used on me. We're reading all around you about those magazines. The clothes we wear are really causing pepper scenes. Yeah. I'm not your stepping stone. I said no matter what you do,
The Flies with their version of I'm Not Your Steppin' Stone. Birmingham was the birthplace of a bunch of great British bands, enough that they coined their own term for the Birmingham sound, brumbeat. The Night Riders were purveyors of the brumbeat sound before changing their name to the Idle Race. They're mostly remembered for launching the career of first Roy Wood, then Jeff Lynne. Both would get together in The Move and eventually form the Electric Light Orchestra. Here's an Idle Race song called Knocking Nails Into My House that shows that Jeff Lynne had something going on right from the start.
this house is mine, but the men they say it's not. You see, this house is the only thing I've got. Running round, they work so hard and fast, but they don't know my house is built to last. Here comes a man in a van, and he's looking very angry at me. They're knocking nails into boards upon my walls. They run and hide as the old gray ceiling falls.
The Idle Race, Knocking Nails Into My House. All the bands we've been talking about here slipped into obscurity pretty quickly, never to be heard again. But let's hear from one band that did make an impact. Though they never had big hits in the US, they were very influential in the UK. The Pretty Things formed in 1963. Initially, they played bluesy R&B influenced stuff like the Yardbirds or the Rolling Stones, but by the time they signed with EMI in 1967, they were a full-on psychedelic band. They released a couple of singles, including Talking About the Good Times, one of the all-time greatest psychedelic tracks, and then released the album SF Sorrow, which is acknowledged as being the very first rock opera, beating The Who's Tommy by over a year. They released a dozen albums over their career and are still referenced today as an influence. So let's go back to February 1968 and listen to Talking About the Good Times.
Talking about the good times. Talking about the good. Talking about the good times. Talking about the good. She had sun in her face. Her lips kiss the sun, caress the sun, the fields of light we found a place. She had sun in her eyes, the clouds across the sun, without the sun, as evening shadows in her eyes. Talking about the good times, talking about the good.
Talking About the Good Times by The Pretty Things. Let's hear one more. The Onyx came from Cornwall, originally named Dick and the Hayseeds, but changed their name to The Onyx around 1966 and signed to Pi Records. They were known for doing great cover versions, but released a handful of self-penned singles, including You Gotta Be With Me, their first single in 1968, which is super catchy and features a very McCartney-esque bass part.
They say you haven't been around before. Lots of clues you gotta see, but you can't unless you go with me. I can get you into places, show you all the faces you wouldn't see if you weren't with me. I can get you into all the scenes, but you gotta be with me. You gotta be with me. Life flowing like a dream. Like it's a beat track, but you can find a brand new thing.
The Onyx, You Gotta Be With Me. Well, I hope you enjoyed this trip through the sounds of psychedelia from 1960s UK. As I said, all of these tracks can be found on the first 10 volumes in the Rubble series. There is a box set that contains all 10 CDs. If you really dug this episode, it might be worth seeking out that collection. I recommend it. New episodes of this podcast come out on the 1st and the 15th of every month, so I'll be back in your ears soon. You can catch up on all the episodes you missed on our website, lovethatsongpodcast.com, or just look for us in your favorite podcast app. And while you're there, leave a review of the show. I always hear that reviews are the number one thing that the algorithms use to determine how shows get ranked and who gets exposed to the podcast. So if you can leave even a short review, that'd be great. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this episode. I'm going to leave you with one more clip. You may remember the band Golden Earring for their hits Radar Love and Twilight Zone. But these guys have been together since 1961. They're another Dutch band, and in 1966, they recorded a commercial for Coca-Cola. It was released on a single that was apparently only available at one Dutch grocery store. The band didn't particularly like doing it, but they needed the money to buy a new van. Such are the artistic compromises you make in the music business. So I'll leave you with Things Go Better with Coke from 1966 by Golden Earring.
Things go better with gold.